Why do ordinary people fear recessions, while the rich often become even wealthier during them? At first, Atlas thought that made no sense. A recession is supposed to be bad for everyone. Businesses close, people lose jobs, investments fall. News headlines become darker every day. Fear spreads through society. Yet somehow, history shows that many of the world's greatest fortunes were built during economic downturns. Atlas wanted to understand why. His journey began at the entrance of an ancient temple known as the Cycle of Wealth. Above the entrance were two massive stone doors. One was labeled Prosperity, the other was labeled Recession. Most travelers rushed toward the door of Prosperity. Very few dared to enter the door marked Recession. Atlas stepped forward. Inside, he discovered a giant stone wheel slowly turning through history. The wheel had only two words carved into it: boom, bust. Boom, bust. Again and again, century after century. The pattern never stopped. Atlas soon realized something important. Economic cycles are not accidents. They are part of how economies function. Periods of growth are often followed by periods of correction. When businesses expand too quickly, prices rise too far, or investors become overly optimistic, the cycle eventually reverses. Fear replaces confidence. And that is when recessions begin. As Atlas traveled deeper into the temple, he encountered a crowd of frightened investors. Some were desperately selling stocks. Others were abandoning businesses. Many simply wanted to escape. Above them, giant red arrows pointed downward. The atmosphere was filled with panic. Atlas noticed something strange. While the crowd was running away, a small group of wealthy travelers was quietly moving in the opposite direction. They were calm, patient, focused. Instead of selling, they were buying. Instead of running, they were searching. Atlas followed them. The wealthy travelers led him into a hidden chamber filled with treasures. At first glance, the room looked ordinary. But then Atlas noticed the labels. Companies, real estate, stocks, businesses. All of them were marked with enormous discounts. Some were selling for half their previous value. Others were even cheaper. Atlas suddenly understood. During a recession, fear often causes people to sell valuable assets at low prices. The assets themselves may still be useful. The companies may still generate profits. The buildings may still stand. The businesses may still have customers. But panic changes perception. And when perception changes, prices can fall dramatically. The wealthy travelers understood something that the frightened crowd did not. Price and value are not always the same thing. A valuable asset can become temporarily cheap, and a cheap asset can sometimes become expensive again when confidence returns. Atlas remembered something he had seen throughout history. Every major crisis seemed permanent while it was happening. The Great Depression, the financial crisis of 2008, the pandemic crash. Each felt like the end of the world. Yet economies eventually recovered. Markets eventually recovered. And many assets eventually recovered as well. The people who bought quality assets during those periods often benefited the most. Atlas continued deeper into the temple. There he found an ancient inscription carved into a golden wall. It read, "The greatest opportunities often hide behind the greatest fears." The message seemed simple, but Atlas realized it explained why wealth transfers occur during recessions. Fear causes many people to sell. Patience allows others to buy. And over time, ownership shifts from the fearful to the prepared. As Atlas moved forward, he entered another chamber. In the center stood a statue of a legendary investor. Beneath the statue was another message. Be fearful when others are greedy. Be greedy when others are fearful. Atlas recognized the wisdom immediately. When markets are rising and everyone feels optimistic, assets often become expensive. But during recessions, fear can push prices far below their true value. This is where experienced investors become interested. Not because they enjoy seeing people struggle, but because they understand how markets behave. The wealthy often prepare long before recessions arrive. They maintain liquidity. They reduce unnecessary debt. They keep reserves available. They study businesses and assets they would like to own. Then, when panic appears, they are ready to act. Atlas discovered that recessions do not create opportunities. They reveal them. The opportunities were already there. Fear simply made them visible. He then found a massive map showing previous economic crises. One section highlighted the Great Depression. Another showed the financial crisis of 2008. Another revealed the market crash during the pandemic. Despite the differences between these events, one pattern appeared repeatedly. Assets became cheaper, fear increased, and patient investors accumulated ownership. Atlas followed a trail of golden markers across the map. Each marker represented an investor who bought during difficult times. Many of them eventually became extremely wealthy. Not because they predicted the future perfectly, but because they understood human behavior. Most people buy when they feel comfortable. Most people sell when they feel afraid. The wealthy often do the opposite. Atlas then entered the Chamber of Wealth Transfer. Inside were two groups of people. The first group was selling everything. The second group was buying. Between them flowed a river of ownership. Stocks, businesses, land, assets, all moving from one side to the other. Atlas finally understood the phrase, wealth transfer. Money does not disappear during recessions. Ownership changes hands. Those who are forced to sell transfer opportunities to those who are prepared to buy. That realization changed everything. The recession itself was not the source of wealth. Preparation was. Patience was. Discipline was. Atlas continued his journey toward the final chamber. There he discovered something unexpected. A giant treasure vault labeled Opportunity. Inside were not piles of gold. Instead, there were businesses, factories, patents, real estate, investments, assets that generated value. The lesson was clear. The wealthy do not chase crises. They prepare for them. They understand that economic cycles are inevitable. Booms will come. Busts will come. Fear will return. And when it does, opportunity often returns with it. Atlas looked back at the long path he had traveled. The frightened crowd, the discounted assets, the wealth transfer, the patient investors. Every piece of the puzzle now fit together. The rich do not love recessions because recessions are pleasant. They love the opportunities that fear creates. Because when others panic, prices fall. When prices fall, value can appear. And when value appears, prepared investors act. The final inscription appeared before Atlas as he prepared to leave the temple. It read, "The future belongs not to those who predict every crisis, but to those who prepare for them." Atlas smiled. He had finally uncovered the secret. Recessions are not merely periods of economic pain. They are moments that reveal who was prepared and who was not. And throughout history, those moments have often created the greatest opportunities of all. This is the Risk Atlas, mapping wealth, risk, and power.